We should be live as soon as that changes over. We are live on Facebook. So,
All right.
hey, great. So, hey, in just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on nonprofit operations and how to create a strong back office. But if you've never met me before, my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez. And I'm with Supporting World Hope, a nonprofit consulting company that I started after 25 years in the industry. And we have with us today, I'm so excited about this. We have with us today Hale of Hale Consulting. So before we get started, if you could click a heart or the like, or if you can hear me loud and clear, and let me know where you're watching from, even if you're watching in rebroadcast, because that is going to help with these Facebook algorithms that they keep changing. So, Sean, welcome.
Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
I'm happy to be sipping some tea with you.
Ah,
My fancy new mug that came in the mail yesterday. We put that up to the camera.
Yay, you got the cup, and I got to reach for my cup, which I left on the other side.
Oh my gosh.
I know. No, you're perfect. You are perfect. I left my right beyond my reach. And that's because I'm not a morning person. Told you. My brain don't work in the morning. I'm so happy you got the cup, though. That is awesome. Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Sure. So I've been doing nonprofit work for 20 years. I've gotten to wear all the hats over that time, but the area where I've really found that I have a passion and that I really add a lot of value is the whole back office operations administrative area. That's just, I take a lot of pleasure from helping a nonprofit organization really get that running smoothly so that all the programs folks and the fundraising folks can focus on what they do best. When you have the back office running smoothly, everybody else can really put their energy and their time into where they can also add the most value.
Yeah, I think that's really key. And I think going off script here a little bit, I don't want to throw you off, but I think that's really key. And I just wonder, during this pandemic, how many back office or lack of back office was revealed, especially with people having to work remotely. It would be interesting to find out.
Yeah, some nonprofits were like really glad that they had made some transitions over the past year or two so that when they had the lockdown, it was like, all right, yeah, we've been, doing work from home on Fridays anyway, and we got this down. Others, they really had to scramble. And there's some that are still kind of figuring it out and where they still have people going in like, all right, Mary will go in and work 9 to 5, and then Steve's going to come in and work from like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. because fortunately he's a night owl like you, so it's not a big deal. But like, imagine if Steve wasn't a night owl, right? And so a lot of organizations have used the pandemic to move away from processes that really stopped serving them well maybe 10 or 20 years ago and moved into really more 21st century technology. And that's one of the areas that I love seeing that happen, when you can take a process that might have been painful for an organization or taken lots of time and labor and make that happen faster with the technology, make it more accurate. Then you're also freeing up those resources, that staff time, that brain space, to do higher value work for the organization. So there are so many kind of win-win opportunities out there right now with technology that's really become affordable and easy to use, even for a lot of small nonprofits.
Cool. So let's get into it because I want to learn about those things. But first, because of my background, and I told you I've worked in operations before, and I think it's different across nonprofits. Can you define nonprofit operations?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, you're right. So many people do define it different ways. And at one end of the spectrum, it is pretty much almost like your operations person is like a second executive director, so that the primary executive director can be outward facing and big vision and meeting with all the big wigs in the community. And then that other person is like making sure all of the other day-to-day stuff is happening, the programs, the fundraising, the back office operations. Other organizations take a more conservative approach. And at least my starting point for thinking about what operations is, it's It's the stuff that isn't pure programs and it isn't pure fundraising. It's all that other stuff that's necessary to make the organization work. So it's your finance, your HR, your facilities, your technology, and there's always overlap with the other departments, and it's important to have that overlap, but those are the kind of the key functions that are typically owned by, whether you call it operations or admin, or in some organizations like you have a finance manager or a business manager or a finance director, and like they own all that stuff even though their title might suggest that their scope of responsibilities is smaller.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense to me. And I'm happy for that clarification. So why is it important to have a strong administration?
Well, in my experience, and I've been doing this more than 20 years now, when you see a successful nonprofit, you peel back the cover and you're going to find a strong back office. And the same is very often the opposite true. If an organization is struggling, very often you're going to see a back office that's struggling. And so one way of looking at that and thinking about it is kind of like your car, right? Most of us have a car. And we know that like if we have a brand new Honda Civic, that's not a glamorous car, it's not glitzy, but it's a dependable car. And if you have a new Honda Civic, like you're not worrying about, is it going to get me from point A to point B? Even if I need to take a long road trip, right? I don't need to take it to the mechanic. I don't need to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I'm not like doing a funky dance to get the AC to work right. I don't have to stick my arm out the window to get good reception on the radio, right?
Right.
It's dependable and it works. And that's kind of analogous to having a good strong back office. Like it works, and the program people and the fundraising people and the executive director, they're not worried about that stuff, right? They know that the lights are going to come on and the bills are going to get paid and all that other stuff is taken care of so that they can focus on where they're going to add the most value.
Okay, that makes sense to me, and I think that that's a great analogy because, yeah, when you get a new car, you don't worry about that stuff, and it's one less thing that you have to worry about. So I'm gonna grab my mug off the shit off.
All right, so we can do a little ching.
Yeah, because your coffee looks good, and I have mine, and I just want to make sure I get it. So, how can operations help make? Well, you know what? I'm gonna go back, and this question well, maybe you'll get to it. So I'm going to ask the question as presented. How can operations help you make strategic decisions?
That's a great question. I love it because that's also like some organizations, they don't have operations at the table. It's siloed. And imagine going on a road trip where your operations person in the family for the road trip was siloed and not communicating with the rest of the family. Like, wouldn't you prefer that somebody is making sure you have enough money to actually do the road trip and pay for the gas and the hotels along the way? That somebody is thinking two steps ahead and like, all right, the whole family, they love, whatever it is, zoos or water, whatever. And so let me see if we can make some stops that'll incorporate that along the way. And like, let's finding that Airbnb that's going to be the right price, but also fit into that. And if, the family like really gets up to Maine and really wants to splurge on lobster, that person can give a thoughtful response, not just the kind of, no, it's expensive, we're cheap, but instead give a thoughtful response like, well, I'm sorry, but if we do that, we're not going to have gas money to get back. Or hopefully it might be, yeah, we can do the lobster, but we need to just eat ramen and peanut butter for the drive back. And so, I can definitely make that happen. But, kind of here are your choices, right? And so that's why a successful nonprofit is always going to have operations in the room for important decisions and for those conversations as well. Because really, you want them thinking strategically with you. If you're bringing in a new program, how's that going to impact the rest of the organization, right? Because there are going to be ripple effects, and you want those strategically minded people, those people who are dotting the I's and crossing the T's, you want them to help you think that through and thinking it through collaboratively, right? That's part of operations responsibility, is to not just be the people who say no and we have to do it the way we've always done it, but no, like now that we're all on the same page, we all know we want to go to Disneyland or we want to add this new program. Let's work together and figure out how can we make it work, right? And we'd want to certainly identify the things that might not make it work, but ultimately it's not about the thousand reasons why it's not going to work. It's about finding the pathway to make it work. And are we in agreement as an organization that, yeah, we might have to make a sacrifice to get there, but we want to make this happen.
Okay. So just listening to you, and developing like a checklist for what type of person you're looking for operations. See if I got this right, just based on the conversation. Someone that's strategic, of course, someone that's logistical, someone that's detail oriented, and but also at the same time have a collaborative and team building spirit.
That's, yeah, all those things. And one of the things that I've found so often, so I'm just going to underline what you already pulled out, it's so important to have an operations person, at least your chief operations person, who really plays well with others, so that can be collaborative, which is different from being a martyr, because sometimes we have those, right? The person who like, yeah, sure, dump more work on me. Like, I don't need to sleep or see my family. Like, no, you don't want a martyr,
Right.
but you do want somebody who's going to collaborate with you and help the other leaders of the organization find a way to make that happen, so that like knows that in the vocabulary box, but that's not the first thing or the second thing that they come back with. Instead, it's like, let's tell me more and let's figure out how we can get this done.
That is very interesting. So you talked about saving money and the apps and all that stuff. So what do you mean I have to, you did mention spend money. So what do you mean when you have to spend money to save money?
Yeah, this is one of the things I love talking about. So thank
Okay.
you for asking. It's true, and it's like I learned this phrase from fundraising, but I think it holds true for the rest of the organization as well. And if I can I tell a story?
Yes,
Great.
by all
So
means.
once upon a time, I was helping out an organization. It was a great organization, great nonprofit, really good leadership, really smart, dedicated folks. But one of the things that was holding the organization back was their technology. All the staff had these old computers that were held together with duct tape and a prayer. And you may have encountered one or two organizations like this in your history. And they were also, the mindset was deeply in that nonprofit, cheap kind of thing. Like, we have to be cheap. We cannot spend money ever. And that whole overhead myth and all that baloney, which is a topic I'm sure for several other teas. We could go for a long time on that. But anyway, they were deep in that mindset rather than frugality, which is being strategic about where you're spending the money. And sometimes you do need to spend money, even big chunks of it. And so here's what was going on. And here's the, like in my gut, I knew, oh my gosh, staff are wasting so much time on these laptops, right? That were being held together with bubble gum and duct tape. And so I went and spoke to the leader, and I'd hoped that this would just be a quick and easy conversation. So I didn't do a whole lot of prep. I was like, dude, this ain't working. But like, he wasn't convinced. So went back to my desk, spent about 15 minutes doing the math, and came back and, all right, if staff are losing just 15 minutes a day, that's 55 hours of lost productivity over the course of a year. That's a week and a half. And if we figure out what are we paying them for when they're sitting there waiting for the computer to boot up or have this slow process, the organization was losing in productivity twice as much as it would cost to buy a new computer for the staff person. And so like that, the organization, once we connected those dots, like we were able to get new laptops for everybody. It's like, well, shoot, we have to do this now. Yeah, sure, it's $700 a pop, but it was a no-brainer at that point. And not only was it good for productivity, but it was good for morale because staff felt valued.
Mhm.
And it reinforced it like, yeah, we are here to be productive and not to twiddle our thumbs, but you're important to staff people. So that morale boost also went into added productivity and other good warm fuzzies.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's good to maybe bring someone, not maybe, it's good to bring someone like you in because yeah, when you're sitting in that CEO or executive director's seat, you don't, especially if you have the scarcity mindset, you don't really put the pencil to the paper and figure that out. You just see, oh my God, I have to spend X, Y on these computers, and you don't think about how it relates to productivity and how you're wasting money and all of those things. So that is a really good story and a really good analogy. Not even an analogy; it's a true life story about what it means. You have to spend some money sometimes to save some money. So that's really good. So how can you maximize technology to save money?
There are just so many great tech things out there that make it easy. Today, I want to share a couple of my two favorite new tech tools of 2020. One of them, it's called Loom, like
Mm.
you're weaving, Loom. Do you know this one?
I've heard of Loom. I haven't used it yet, so
Okay.
I'm excited to hear about it.
It's awesome. I love it as an operations administration person because, the thing that we're always kicking the can down the road on is documenting our processes. And the old way of doing it, of like sitting down and writing it all out, goodness gracious, like you got to take a month, stop everything for a month just to write all that stuff out and take the screenshots and make it all look right. And like, no, that doesn't work. And that's why it never happens. And that's why we're all scrambling when we have turnover, right?
Right.
And so the cool thing about Loom is that it's, well, all the basic features are free, and that's all you need for a good basic nonprofit process documentation. And so it's a little app. It sits on your computer, and you just turn it on when you're going to do something anyway. Like, let's say you're going to run payroll. Cool. So you click on that, it opens up, it's going to start recording your screen, and it's going to let you do a voiceover. And so what you do is you just start narrating the normal process, like, I'm going to run payroll today, and I click here, click here, click here. And then, I'm going to do Pat's payroll check. And, Pat, like, there's no variances. It's all normal. And so it's just click, click, click. And then we got Harriet, and Harriet, she like was out on maternity leave. And so this one's a little bit different, and we're going to have to go click, click, click. And so almost no extra time. When you're done with the payroll or whatever the process is, you just hit stop, and Loom automatically takes that whole video that you've just created with your voiceover and the video recording, sends it up to the internet, creates a unique link, and all you're doing is your documentation document is just, here's a link to payroll.
Wow.
And so the extra time is 5, maybe 10 minutes.
So that's an awesome way to use Loom, and you don't have to, like you said, sit there and write those SOPs.
Goodness
Wow.
gracious, no. And the same for like training new staff. Like sometimes or even training old staff, right? If you have multiple people who need to know the same process, so you have multiple people doing data entry for your donor records or whatever, like sometimes training people can be a real pain in the butt. Like the old way was you sit together in front of your computer and they're taking notes and, okay, go back again and this, that, and the other. Like, no, just give them a good narration, create the video for them, and then like, if you have any questions, if I miss anything, come back and we'll talk about it. But they got it right there. They can hit rewind without taking up your time, and they can watch that video 10 times over, and 2 weeks later when they forget something, they can go back and watch the same video instead of coming and knocking on your door and like, oh, I didn't take such good notes after all. Like, no, it's good for everybody, I think.
Where were you when I was in this role?
It
That is
wasn't
awesome.
It's awesome. It wasn't there 2 years ago. We got a new guy where I was working, and it's like day one. It's like, hey, can you go find us this tool? Because I want us to have great documentation. And he found a good tool, but Loom wasn't available. And it just, Loom takes out so many of these extra steps and makes it just so crazy easy that, like, yeah, this is the
That's
year we're
awesome.
going to document stuff. And
That
we're
is
going to,
awesome.
yeah. And then the back office people, the person who runs payroll can take a vacation, and they can take a vacation over
Exactly. They don't have
payroll.
to come in on their vacation to do payroll so people can get paid and then leave. Because I'm telling you, that's what we did in our organization.
Oh yeah. And that's awful for everybody. It's awful for the payroll person, the people making them come in feel bad. And the other thing, it's actually a really good internal control, because when you have people who are indispensable for certain roles, like that's when mischief can happen. When nobody else knows how payroll happens and can jump in, then that's when weird stuff goes undetected for years and years. And you look at these fraud cases, and so many times it's because,
The
oh
same.
no, only Terry can do payroll.
Yeah.
Nobody else knows how to do it. And so Terry never takes a vacation. Like that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And every auditor will tell you that's a big red flag.
Yeah. That's that. Just Loom. You got another one for us?
I do. This is
Okay.
kind of a funny one though, where um, well, it's the one you and I talked about yesterday, a little bit in
Okay.
preparation. So, you know, we have a lot of times in our organizations, we have these pain points like expense reports sometimes, where it's like chasing down people and like the people who are out, the fundraisers or the executive directors, like they're out there, they're having coffees with people and this, that, and the other. Like saving receipts is a pain in the butt, but then there's also this whole uncomfortable dynamic of that, back and forth with the back office. Like, yeah, we need these receipts so we can pay the credit card and, we can prove that it's not, fraudulent charges on the credit card and blah, 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 or, you stealing and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's expense reports. There's also some organizations find themselves in situations where they're juggling like a lot of debit cards or like grocery store cards and things like that. So different people can go and buy things on behalf of the organization without having personal out of pocket, right? That's a best practice, to not ask somebody to use their personal credit card for work expenses. But then you can end up in a situation where only like two people have credit cards, company cards, and then what do? Well, they lend it to this person and lend it to that person. And then at the end of the month, well, where's that receipt for Amazon or whatever? And what was it? Or, I don't know. Well, that card is supposed to stay in your control the whole time, and you're legally responsible for it as an individual, right? And so all these things, there's a cool tool that I found out about this year that kind of bundles them all up. It's free. It makes them 1,000 times easier. And here's the funny thing about this tool is they have an incentive that they allow me to give people to go and talk to them, that if you sit through a demo with them, they'll actually make it worth your while. And by make it worth your while, I mean like there's actually incentive that won't let me mention in public places. But
Right.
if you talk to me and just show that you are sincere about the product and not just trying to get the free incentive, which is it's a good free incentive. It's not like one of those like a swag bag full of throwaway stuff. This is pretty much something every single person can use.
Yeah.
So come talk to me. I'll connect you with this organization, and you take this quick demo, and they're not going to do another thing I love about them. They don't do a hard sell. Like if it's not good for you, that's okay. They're going to go, they got lots of other people to talk about. So they're not going to come in and bang down your door, but it solves all those things. It's all in a single credit card. And so it makes those processes, it makes them all automated and electronic, and you're got your smartphone. And so you take a picture of the receipt and it uploads automatically, and you just throw the receipt away. Like, so if you're out having coffee, if you're the executive director and you have 10 coffees a week, take a picture with your phone, code it, right? Coffee with Sabrina, and charge it to my whatever account, and like you're done. And your administrator's happy. You got the documentation.
So
No more
win-win.
shoeboxes full of receipts. No more people being angry at each other and chasing stuff down. And that you can make 1,000 virtual credit cards. So, if you need to send a volunteer down to the store to get stuff, or you have like somebody who's managing a group home and they need to make grocery buys once a week, like you can put $100 on there every week or whatever, or you can create burner cards or whatever, and it's like that, and you're done. And
That's awesome. That's
it's
awesome, because in
awesome.
my head I'm seeing the nightmare what we used to have to do. We had a sign out form, who has the card, and then like they haven't turned that card back in and they signed it out on this day. Go hunt them down and get that card and get that receipt, because you know how they are. They'll lose it. And so we'll go through that whole process.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it's bad for morale. It's bad. It wastes time. And so yeah, if you got that volunteer, yeah, just give them $100 burner card that you spin up right away. Or if you need that, intern to go make some purchases on Amazon, great. This card's only good for Amazon, and you need, $500, and they're great, and it expires tomorrow.
that's pretty awesome. So I would hope that people would reach out to you for that. So hey, if you're just joining us, welcome to our broadcast. We're currently talking about nonprofit operations and how to create a strong back office. And we've covered a lot of topics, defining what operations is, talking about how sometimes you have to spend money to save money. And Sean has shared with us a mind-blowing technology app. Go back and watch the video because it's worth it. It's a couple of things. It's very worth it. And if you're here, let us know where you're watching from and click the heart and like button. If you can hear us loud and clear, it's going to help us with our Facebook algorithms. If you're watching in replay, just kind of let us know where you're watching from. That way this video will stay at the top and people can enjoy it because it has some great information in it. So outside of that, maybe you might have another money saving tip for us around operations.
I got so many of them, and I love sharing them.
Okay.
How about I share? Do you want a story first, or do you want me to talk about the other freemium?
I like the stories because the stories make me miss the days of the struggle.
Yes. Yeah, we could look back on that now and laugh. So this particular story, I'm going to tell it about one situation, but it's actually something I've run into more than once. Um, I was having lunch with a fellow nonprofiteer about a year ago. We'd gotten introduced at a party and went out for lunch just to kind of like getting to know each other kind of deal. And we're talking about this, that, and the other. There was no particular agenda in mind, but come to find out over the course of their conversation that their organization had been using QuickBooks as their CRM, as their donor database.
Oh, the donor database.
Yeah, yeah. And for your listeners who might not know why that's not exactly the best idea, it's kind of like you can make furniture out of a Swiss Army knife, but why would you, right? Because it's going to take you forever and ever. You're going to get blisters on your finger. You're going to hate making even a simple chair. And like, wouldn't you rather have a saw and some nails, a hammer, some other stuff to make even a simple piece of furniture? And so QuickBooks is a great tool for bookkeeping. That's why so many small businesses and small nonprofits and even medium-sized nonprofits, they use it because it's great. And you can kind of twist it and fold it kind of funny and kind of make it do extremely basic donor database kind of functions. This nonprofit, it was like, this is one that they have good visibility, good name in the community, and they have a ton of really smart people working for them, really accomplished professionals. But just about everybody in the organization, their experience and their training, and many of them even had advanced degrees, but in the thing that they're specialized in,
Right.
not in back office stuff. And so they were just making this up as they went along, right? And they were not getting kind of outside perspective or talking to colleagues and to find out like, oh, goodness gracious. So anyway.
That would have never occurred to me, first of all, to use QuickBooks as donor CRM. But okay.
But people do. And this is not the first time I've run into it. And, you know, if it's a DI, and it's part of this also scarcity mindset, like, you know, we can't, you know, we'll just, you know, figure out a way to bootstrap this and bubble gum and duct tape and that's where that becomes really, really expensive. And where, you know, if you don't have a good group of peers who you can talk to, and if you don't have anybody in the organization who has experience doing this, you know, like a lot of meaningful experience, not just repeating bad habits from another organization, then you got to get that perspective from somewhere to help you review those processes and the technology that you're using. And so anyway, their workaround for this being, you know, kind of the Swiss Army knife building chairs was, we'll just bring in another staff person. And so they hired a whole nother full-time person to be pulling the data out of QuickBooks and trying to put it into like mailing lists and this, that, and the other. And so like, yeah, they could not, and even then you couldn't do what you can do with just a good basic donor database, like good use management, right? But that was their workaround. So anyway, I kind of, my eyes got big and I talked this guy through it and helped him connect to somebody who got them hooked up onto a great database. And actually, even though it was a small organization, because they had a lot of complexity and they had multiple earned revenue sources as well as multiple charitable revenue sources, Salesforce ended up being the right solution for them. And so they are really kicking butt right now in their back office with all this stuff, because now they have the right tool for the job.
Yeah, and they can actually steward their donors the way they need to be stewarded without
oh yeah. Before they could have somebody go to the same event over and over again that they didn't even know unless it like just stuck in their heads, right? And so like, but you want to, as an organization, if somebody keeps coming to your events, well, why aren't we asking them for a gift, right? And then like, okay, now we got them to give a gift, like maybe we should ask them for 2 gifts.
Wow.
That whole moves management fundraising kind of basics, right?
Yeah, that's a good story. So Tell us about the free. I have some questions here. I've gotten off track because that was a great story. I
Thank you,
thought it was
Sabrina.
pretty bad. So I'm gonna ask the question, and you take it to where you need to. So how do you budget in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, that's really delicate, right? And you want to be careful with that. And half of it is about logic, right? And it's about like thinking 3 steps ahead and what are all the wild cards that like, and there's always wild cards even in your best budgeting year, but this year there are a dozen more. What are all the wild cards and what does that mean for our organization? Like what could the swing be between like, here's what we know we can earn and here's the at-risk revenue where we might or we might not get it. Um, Half of it's about logic and about plotting all that stuff out. And I have a couple of blog posts about that. But half of it also is about bringing the rest of the organization along with you so that emotional collaboration, working with stakeholders kind of thing. Because the last thing, and I'm talking especially to the folks right now who are kind of like me, who are you're good at the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Like if all we do is present the logical thing and like, yeah, we know we're going to have to do some painful cuts here, this, that, and the other. See you later. Like that's going to go over like a bucket of ice water, right? And so there's bringing people along and engaging with folks and hearing from your stakeholders who are going to be impacted, right? And so all the different program people and involving them in a meaningful in the decision making. And so one of the tools that I really love, and my good friend Tara Kirkland over at Mission Capital turned me onto this tool. It's called the Matrix Map, and I have a little video on this, kind of a quick how-to, and there are also other great materials on the internet for the Matrix Map. But the idea is you're bringing a group of people together, and you're making a grid. So you get your whiteboard or whatever, and you're just making a grid with 4 boxes, and and you're basically on this grid, you're going to plot all of your different programs. And from top to bottom, it's going to be mission impact, right? Because we have different programs and some of them are like crazy, super aligned with mission. If your mission is to feed the hungry and you have a soup kitchen, like that's a high mission impact. If one of your activities is a gala, that's a lower mission impact probably. That's not moving the needle on hunger probably a whole lot, but it still might be an important activity. From left to right, that's where you're going to be plotting the kind of the cash part of this. And so if it lands on the left side, that's an activity that's losing money for the organization. If it's on the right side, that's where it's getting more money. And so that's where like your gala, it might be low on the mission impact, but that's bringing in cash that feeds your other programs, right? And so that's going to be something that you're probably going to want to hang on to. And that might be subsidizing the soup kitchen because you haven't figured out a way to monetize all the people you're serving soup to. But then by plotting all your different programs and activities out, sometimes you're going to see things that are losing money and less mission impact, right? And that doesn't mean they're necessarily a bad idea. So you might have a jobs program. Your mission is to feed the hungry, but you started up a jobs program a few years ago because, well, if people have jobs, they can feed themselves. Like it's a good thing, but also less direct mission impact. And so if a cut has to happen, if the organization has to make a strategic cut, the jobs program is also losing about as much money as a soup kitchen, but it has lower mission impact. And so that might be the one that needs to go. And you might also have a legacy activity for your organization. Let's say you've been doing some kind of theater or something that was from that has been a tradition since the early days of the organization, and you do like the summer theater to raise awareness and bring people into the organization, and that's great. But like, it's stopped bringing in new people because the younger generation, they're all about YouTube, not about going to summer theater, and it's all the same volunteers running it, and so it's not moving the mission forward because it's not bringing new people to hear the message, and it's also losing money. And so that might be a program that like almost definitely needs to stop or get spun off. Perhaps like those volunteers might want to continue to put on their summer theater, but it's not core to mission and it's not core to revenue.
Right. That's a hard conversation. You said matrix map, right?
Matrix map, yes.
Is that something we can find on your site? Link to a blog or
Yep,
something?
I have a blog on that and on my website, seanhale.org. But also, if you Google it, like nonprofit matrix map, there are also other good articles out there. And so the one thing that I have that I haven't found anywhere else is like the short 5-6 minute video of here's how you do it really quick and kind of to get the idea.
Okay.
And you get your staff and your key stakeholders together and you're working together on this, right? And the bean counter people like me, your accountant or finance director, whatever, they might be the ones who are helping you figure out what's the financial impact, but the mission impact is very important. And sometimes as financial people, we can miss pieces on the financial impact piece because sometimes that's not always just what's in the in the cut and dry financial reports, because
Right.
sometimes this activity over here actually indirectly feeds this thing over here. This activity, this is where we identify our new donors.
Okay.
And this is our supply chain of new donors is doing this activity. And so we can't necessarily kill it, even though it's losing money, because they come in and they give it another place, even though they don't give at that activity.
Right. Right. So that makes sense. So, how do you, so my last question is, and it says, we don't have the money to pay for X. We don't have the money to pay for a consultant. We don't have money to pay for a new CRM, etc. How do you address that?
Yeah, we don't have the money to buy those new computers that now we understand that we need them.
Yes, that was a great story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this is a chicken and egg kind of problem. And if you don't, what do you do with the chicken egg kind of deal? Like either you're gonna figure out a way to get over the first hump, or what, you're gonna close up shop? Are those, because if this is a really tough budget year, you got to figure out a way. And the trick is, one of them is, you got to figure out a way to, and hopefully you can find somebody to at least underwrite the step one. And the trick is have step one be strategic. And so it might be those computers, so your staff can be more productive. And if they can be more productive, maybe you can go from having 20 staff people to 19. And then you freed up a whole $40,000, $50,000 just by not rehiring, because you're going to lose a couple of people every year anyway. You don't even have to fire anybody.
Right.
And so now you've freed up $40,000. Great. Well, now you can invest that in this thing over here that, like the new getting off of QuickBooks and using a real CRM. And you need to spend some money on that, but then you do that. And now all of a sudden your fundraising team, they can bring in twice as much money. And so now you've taken 5,000, you've turned it into 40,000, turn that into 200,000. You just got to get over the first hump.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I'm going to check and see if there's any questions out there. We have some people watching. I think there's comments about the information. Oh, we have Joyce from New Orleans, and we have Gary. I know I am butchering your name, and I'm so sorry. She's from your neck of the woods. She's from Austin. And
Hi, Gotti.
We have
or whatever the correct pronunciation of your name
is.
I apologize for mangling it.
Yeah, Kathy from Winfield. I don't see any questions at this moment right now, but I want to give you an opportunity. I will say this: I don't see any questions, but one of the questions that I get a lot is, Sabrina, can you help me with fundraising for my nonprofit? And I always say the answer is yes. And the next step that you have to do is just visit my website at www.supportingworldhope.com to check out, my services. But if you're watching again and rebroadcast, you can put your questions there, and Sean will I'll share them with him, and he will answer those questions around operation. We will get back to you. So Sean, thank you. I know you do have one last offer that you would like to share with the crowd. So if you could, that would be great. I'm excited about it.
I love to. And this is one of the many things that I love getting to do, which is share more ideas, share more stories about how to save money. So I've put together an hour-long webinar. It's called Beyond Belt Tightening. And the idea is, like, how are you going to, your nonprofit needs to free up money, right? And you've already tightened the belt as far as you can go, right? And all you're doing is eating half a bowl of oatmeal every day. And that's you've really cut everything you can cut, or at least you you think you've cut everything you can cut.
Mhm.
And you've like begged every single person you think you can beg, and you've gotten all the government bailout stuff that you can get. What we do in Beyond Belt Tightening is kind of help put on a different kind of thinking cap so you can kind of identify all the things that we do as nonprofits, like the QuickBooks example, like the computers example. There are 1,000 other things that we might not even be aware of because we're so busy doing the day to day, or because we haven't had the time to keep up with the technology, or for whatever reason. And so over that hour, we go over a bunch of different ideas, but it's also about helping people get themselves into a different kind of mind space, so that they can go back to their organizations and look at things with a different perspective. Because a lot of times it's right in front of our noses, but we're so used to seeing it, right, that we forget about it and we go on because there's a bigger fire that we need to deal with. So sometimes and so anyway, it's going to be free for anybody who watches you, Sabrina, as long as they can remember your name, because that's the promo code
That's the
is
code.
Sabrina, all caps, Sabrina. So if you can remember her name and have it in all caps, then all you need to do is go to my website, go to events, and so you will get to attend this one for free. I'm going to be holding it at the end of the month, and it's called Beyond Belt Tightening. And so, yeah, go to my website, Sean Hale, SeanHale.org, and we'll get you set up for that free Beyond Belt Tightening session. And yeah, I hope you can make it, because it's a lot of fun, and I love hearing. Very often people get on there and they have new stories that I can share also.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I do have a comment here. Joyce said it was an awesome presentation. I just wanted you to know that. And
Thanks, Joyce.
your Austinite said this was super, and it was super insightful. They don't have any questions at this moment, but they wanted you to know that it was super insightful. So
Thank you.
I want to close by saying, if there's a topic you want to hear about, hit me up right here on my page to let me know. And you can tap the live button so you'll know the next time we go live. And you can also see other live videos I've done by visiting my website. Again, it's supportingworldhope.com. And I will leave you with this: your mission matters, and it deserves to be highlighted in the community. Your mission matters, and it can be an inspiration to those who need it the most. Your mission matters and deserves to be funded to its fullest capacity. Your mission matters. And that is Sipping Tea with Sabrina. And we will see you the next time. Yeah, I finally got mine. So thank you
Yay.
so much, Sean. It has been such a great morning.